Well, right now, oral arguments at the Supreme Court are over as far as the health care law, and the justices are weighing their decisions right now. Some critics claim, though, the Supreme Court themselves, the justices themselves, are crossing the line in a power grab. In fact, in an editorial in the Washington Post today, there is a suggestion that the court is now acting as an alternative, if you will, to Congress. Listen to part of this editorial. Quote, "The conservative justices were obsessed with weird hypotheticals. If the federal government could make you buy health insurance, might it require you to buy broccoli or health club memberships, cell phones, burial services, and cars, all of which have nothing to do with an uninsured person getting expensive treatment that others, often taxpayers, have to pay for?" Joining me now, Judge Andrew Napolitano, Fox's very own senior judicial analyst. So, Judge, this law has often been criticized as a power grab by the federal government. But now there's a different opinion. Maybe it's the Supreme Court doing that. Are we running the risk of this?
Well, let me start by saying that I know the writer of the editorial, and he's an intelligent person who's arguing that he was unhappy, essentially, with the tenor of the questions yesterday. But if you are familiar with an appellate courtroom, this is the ultimate appellate courtroom, you know that judges often throw, quote, weird hypotheticals at lawyers to challenge their understanding of the law and to ask where the law might go next. Think about it this way. The Supreme Court is very aware of its place in history. It sometimes thinks like the Vatican does, Jenna, not in days or weeks or months, but in generations or even centuries. And it wants to know, if we authorize the Congress to do this, to force people to buy health insurance that they might not want, might not need, and might not be able to afford, what will Congress force people to buy next?
Well, so, Judge, let me just stop you there. And this is something that the writer brought up as well. How do we know the justices are ruling on the law of the land and not on an ideology? Or is there a difference?
Well, most justices on the Supreme Court are there because they enjoy and possess the same ideology as the president who appointed them. I think that Mr. Dion's editorial was probably a direct attack on Justice Scalia, who was appointed by President Reagan. The two of them believed in the federal system of government, that the Constitution gives limited, precisely delegated powers to the federal government and leaves the rest to the states. So it is Justice Scalia's job and the job of his colleagues to assure that Congress stays within the confines of the Constitution. The process of doing that job sometimes requires asking, quote, weird hypotheticals and even funny and sharp questions.
I bet you know nothing about that, weird hypotheticals that some people ask you about, present company included in that. All right, Judge, a quick question about implementations. They're all working to figure out what their decision is going to be on this law.
Right.
Whatever their decision is, how quickly is that decision implemented? So let's just say, and I hate to deal with a hypothetical, that the health care law, the individual mandate goes out the door.
Right.
Then how quickly does that change things for the average person out there?
Well, it will stop the implementation of the individual mandate, which, as you know, doesn't kick in until 2014. But it will also undo some things that have already been done. Some states, for example, have already spent tax dollars on setting up the state insurance exchanges, basically an expansion of Medicaid to people who can't afford health insurance. Those will collapse. The federal government has already spent billions of dollars. It's not going to get that money back, but the law authorizing the expenditure of that money will end. Basically, the Supreme Court, if this is invalidated, will say nothing can happen from here on forward, and what has already happened, just dismantle it in a reasonable period of time.
A reasonable period of time, but not a specific period of time.
Correct.
All right, well, we'll still have to see again. Only hypothetics at this point. Judge, always nice to see you. Thank you so much.
I am glad your hypotheticals were not weird.
They will be someday, most days, Judge. Thanks.